Welcome back to the Bleu Blanc Pod. If you don't mind, Liam, I'd like to start with a little monologue about those goofs over at Overdrive on TSN.
Of course.
Do you know what I'm about to talk about? Did you see the quotes?
I've seen some of the video, yeah.
Okay, so basically O-Dog in particular over at Overdrive was talking about how the Habs should trade Ivan Demidov as a no-brainer for Sidney Crosby, 1-for-1. Which, you know, Sidney Crosby's an amazing player, legend of the game, Mount Rushmore type player. But we don't fully know yet what Demidov is. But if he lives up to be 80% of what people are hyping him up to be, I'd rather have 10 to 12 years of Ivan Demidov than 2 years of a declining Sidney Crosby. You know, had they named any other player or any other Habs prospect, I'm talking Reinbacher, Hage, maybe even Fowler to a lesser extent. And maybe even adding on 2 firsts to that. I'm taking that every day of the week for Crosby, twice on Sundays.
Yeah.
You know, this team is a Sidney Crosby away from being a serious conference finals contender, maybe even making a Stanley Cup finals appearance. But we're a prime Demidov away from being a potential dynasty. And I don't think we can throw that away from 2 good years of Sidney Crosby.
I agree.
You know, so to O-Dog and the rest of the goofs over at the Toronto Sports Network, keep your clickbait, sensationalist bullshit for the Leafs while you drive guys out of town there, and we'll take the Habs talk from here.
Yeah, appreciate it.
That was my TED Talk.
That's the big run.
Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I think just for the sake of it, throwing the name Ivan Demidov out is just, it's them baiting. That's all it is. They're just throwing bait and seeing how many people they can get mad, make comments like us. It's ridiculous. I agree with you. I think he is the only untouchable we have. And I'm not going to say all of them, but I know there's one guy on there that did say, well, isn't that a bit much? Right? Because you are weighing 2 years of, you know, excellent play from Sidney Crosby, or giving up the next 10 to 12 for Demidov. I think, Crosby would change the situation here immensely, but that comes with having Demidov on his wing in all likelihood, right?
Yeah.
Or, yeah, it's a ridiculous proposal. It's not going to go anywhere. Kent Hughes would hang up the phone immediately on Dubas if he even brought him up. I think a trade proposal for Crosby starts with potentially 2 firsts, as you mentioned. It's not out of the realm of possibility. You give up Hage, you give up 2 firsts. Maybe this year's first you say is top 5 protected, right? And that's it.
Okay, so let's take the 2 firsts as a basis. All right, for sure the Habs would have to give up 2 firsts at least in a trade.
At least, yeah.
Of the 3 guys that I mentioned, rank them in order of who you would most like to include to least, all right? So I mentioned David Reinbacher, I mentioned Michael Hage, and I mentioned Jacob Fowler.
I'm a believer in quantity, in a sense, where how much do you have of everything, right? You only have one David Reinbacher in the system. This is ridiculous, okay? I fully understand that.
Yeah.
The guy I want to hold on to the most is David Reinbacher, which I understand some people... I understand their viewpoint.
Myself.
Yes, yeah, I know. Because he's been hurt the last couple of seasons, I get that too, but Reinbacher is 6'3" every time he's on the ice, and he's right-handed. And there's not a lot of prospects who fit that profile right now in the league. And he's 20. Like, I don't want to give that up. I don't want to give up what he could be, right?
Yeah.
Where, to an extent, he's only projected as like a top 4, but if that potential to be a top pair defenseman where he's maybe on power play 2, or he's just an elite penalty killer, elite defender. I don't want to give that up.
Yeah.
I understand how hard it is to find goalies, but at the same time, once you kind of teams don't always win with elite goaltending, like the Avs a few years ago.
Yeah.
They won with Darcy Kemper, so you can win with that middle of the pack guy. So I don't think losing somebody like Fowler in a deal for Crosby would be the end of the world. Like we have a guy like Sam Montembeault, and I think Montembeault is an example of that middle of the pack goaltender who, as long as you have the team around him, you can win. So I think giving up Fowler, who has the potential to be that, maybe top 10 goaltender in the league one day, in exchange for like you got Sidney Crosby for 2 years. Like, I would be willing to give up somebody like Fowler. I would do that trade 100%. And then Michael Hage, you're giving up a guy who could one day be a good, second line center.
A good 2C, I think, yeah.
Yeah, a relatively good 2C for Sidney Crosby to be your 2C. It's not a question for me. So that would be my ranking. It would be, I want to hold on to Brian Bacher the most, then Fowler, then Hage. And that's just based on, what you can find.
I don't disagree with that ranking at all. I would maybe just flip Reinbacher and Fowler. I think Fowler's shown that he has shown some flashes of being that elite player that I don't know that necessarily Reinbacher has shown. Reinbacher has shown some flashes of being a very good player, but I don't know if he's the type of guy that'll move the needle quite as much as maybe a maximum potential Jacob Fowler might be.
That's fair.
And
that's fair.
I may have a different answer had we not just acquired Noah Dobson in the offseason, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it seems like that right D spot is, for the foreseeable future, for the next 7 at least years, is going to be taken up by Noah Dobson.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think that probably skews me a bit because I haven't seen Dobson play.
That's true.
For the team, so in my head, it's probably still a little bit unanswered, and that's why I'm holding on to Reinbacher a bit. That's definitely a part of it.
Yeah, you don't want to run into another Ryan McDonough situation, right?
Yeah. Don't get me started.
And honestly,
granted, it wouldn't be in like the example we're using is trading for Sidney Crosby, so like it's not like it would be in a Scott Gomez trade, but yeah, I know what you mean.
But now that I said that, that's kind of got me thinking. I think Ryan McDonough is a decent comparable to what a prime David Reinbacher could be.
Yeah, I think you're right. Actually, like not flashy. Just
give you 45 points a year.
Yeah, like just does his job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it
wow,
would
what
be
a profile.
Unfortunate to lose him, and I'm not the biggest fan of him. Again, like I said in the previous episode, not necessarily because of the player that he is. I think he's going to be a solid second pairing right D, which don't grow on trees. We know that. We see the value every trade deadline of what people are willing to pay for that right-handed defenseman.
Yeah.
It's more about, again, what we could have picked up instead of Reinbacher with that same pick.
That's fair.
But, yeah, so that was my monologue. I'm glad we're in agreement over the fact that those are ludicrous comments over Ivan Demidov. But,
Yeah, that's Jeff O'Neill for you. He's just...
I can't stand the guy.
I know. He says too much. And he does it to keep his job, so it's fair.
Speaking of guys that say too much, I know you wanted to touch on Hutson's dad's
oh my
comments.
God. Oh my God, this man. Yeah. I think
What
it
did he
was...
say?
His dad came out, and he was talking in his second interview with Grant McKegg, who's
Another goof.
He's another guy in the Canadiens media. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably know who Grant McKegg is, and his history of incredibly just like blasphemous takes. If you've ever heard about him saying that Dylan Strome's going to be a better player than Connor McDavid, or Jesperi Kotkaniemi is going to be as good as Austin Matthews or better, those are from Grant McKegg.
Like, how does this guy even have a following?
He just doesn't stop talking, and that's sometimes that's all it takes. But anyways, Lane Hutson's dad got interviewed, a 45-minute interview with Grant McKegg, and when you're talking to somebody for that long, sometimes things can get a little loose.
Yeah.
Sometimes you go from media mode to, wow, okay, we're having a real in-depth
mode, right?
Yeah, you're getting real. Yeah, you are getting real. Essentially, you're speaking your mind a lot more fluidly. You feel like you can really talk to this person. Sometimes you forget you're being recorded, maybe, and that, but I don't think that's the case. He knows. Lane Hutson's dad knows what he wanted to say there, and he really wanted to let the USA management group hear it, which is incredibly risky, I thought. He mentioned that maybe his sons would go and play for Team Canada because he was really disappointed that Lane Hutson wasn't invited to the camp. Even though, and I understand where he's coming from, there were certainly some guys that got invited to that, summer invite to maybe get introduced to the organization and what it's going to look like in February. But he's really taken a big risk in talking and saying what he said. Most of his sons, Lane and Cole, I know for sure, played for USA Hockey at World Juniors at the big tournament in the winter. But it's really risky. I think it's really tough.
Yeah. Here's my thing, right? Lane Hutson was probably not going to make that team. Unfortunately, his strengths are almost entirely on offense. And at this point in their careers, I'd rather have Quinn Hughes on the ice, or I'd rather have, maybe even Adam Fox, or, there's
like Werenski.
Or Werenski, sure.
Yeah.
That's a much better example than Adam Fox. So he wasn't going to get that power play time, so you're not getting that maximum return on the Lane Hutson ice time.
Yeah.
So I'm not blaming them for him not making the team. That was probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
But, who are some of the other guys? Who are some of the other names? Did you say Neil Pionk was invited?
Yeah, Neil Pionk was a name for me that just like...
Like, come on, what are we doing here?
Exactly. Like, there's a lot of guys, right? But for me, it was... Yeah, there's Neil Pionk was just one that stood out to me. I don't know why, I just can't get over it. Like,
Another
there's a
guy
lot
who's
of...
not going to make the team.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other young players that got invited. Frank Nazar got invited to that camp.
Yeah, granted he's a forward, right? So it's not the same.
I understand it's not the
He's
same, but
competing against the same guys, right?
yeah, it's a different group for sure. But I understand where his dad came in and his perspective, and he was just like, I don't know how setting records and winning the Calder isn't enough, right?
Absolutely.
At least to just be welcomed into that group, right?
Expose him to the organization.
Yeah, Lane Hutson is, at this rate, projecting to be on the 2030 Olympic team, right? Potentially.
Well, maybe not now that his dad made those comments.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like, he took such a massive risk, I think, in going public and saying something like that. And even Brad Marchand on Instagram replied to Lane Hutson and said, "Dude, you gotta shut him up. You gotta shut him up." And you know what? He's probably onto something, because he's putting everything at risk for his sons to play international hockey. I don't know. Is Hutson's dad going to be as big of an issue as Marner's dad? Being in the public eye,
we saw what happened with Marner.
Having these quotes, yeah, that's, as a Canadiens fan, that I have concerns over that, and like, I don't know what these negotiations are going to be like for Lane Hutson over the next year, right? Or how many times is he going to have an interview with Grant McKegg and speak his mind?
Yeah.
Is it going to cause problems internally? That's what I'm worried about.
Which is always, something to be worried about, especially with a guy of Lane Hutson's profile.
Yeah.
It could make a difference between him holding out for half a season or, signing at a team-friendly deal. Time will tell, but if his dad continues to be somewhat outspoken like this, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, he wants the best for his son, but
yeah,
hopefully it just doesn't cause any headaches the same way that, Marner's dad, Galchenyuk's dad, some of those guys have proven to be somewhat of a nuisance to the overall team.
For sure. But the other side of his dad coming out and being forward with these things is that it benefits us as Canadians ourselves. I think that's the fun part for us, is like, okay, if it does work out that the Hutsons are no longer going to be welcome at USA camp because of these comments, I think that was certainly put at risk of this, criticizing a guy like Bill Guerin, who has so much influence. Like, I'm pretty sure he's the president or the GM for the U.S. men's team.
He is.
Right? So as Canadians ourselves, I think it's pretty exciting to think that, wow, maybe Lane Hutson's going to play for Team Canada one day instead.
I think he could. I think he would make Team Canada. A lot of people were saying, oh, if he doesn't make Team USA, how's he going to make Team Canada? Right now, in September 2025, I'm sorry, but as an overall unit, Team USA's defensive core is a better unit than
absolutely.
Canada's.
Yep.
Who is the second best? Cale Makar, best defenseman on the planet,
100%.
top 5 player in the league.
Yeah.
He's going to get the power play 1 touches.
Yeah, for sure.
Who is the second offensive defenseman there?
I think right now it's somebody like Morrissey.
Okay. Morrissey, great player. But,
yeah,
in Lane Hutson's first year, he damn near reached Josh Morrissey's, career high.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying Lane Hutson would make this year's Olympics in 2026, but he is damn sure going to make Canada's team in the 2030 Olympics.
Yeah.
Although then maybe you run into Matthew Schaefer or some of those other guys.
Yeah, there are certainly...
He projects to be, more of a figure on Canada's blue line moving forward if he decides to make the switch than probably Team USA's, who is for the foreseeable future going to have Quinn Hughes, Zach Werenski, and Adam Fox in that offensive, power play role.
Yeah. I think his, let's say, competition because the greatest strength that Lane Hutson would have is the ability to move the puck on the power play, right? That would be his greatest asset for trying to make a Team Canada. So there was a few young players, right, on this team in the last Four Nations tournament. We got to see guys like Travis Sanheim. Thomas Harley was fantastic when he came in. He got called upon because Shea Theodore got hurt. And there's Evan Bouchard as well. I think alongside Cale Makar, of course. Like, Cale Makar's not losing his spot on power play 1. Far and away, it's not happening.
Not for the next 10 to 15 years, probably.
Yeah, far and away, it's not happening. So I think he would have to be. That's the thing. Lane Hutson knows he's got to work on his defensive game enough to the point
Where he's not one-dimensional. Where he becomes like that Quinn Hughes level.
Yeah, where he's not so one-dimensional that he is. Where Thomas Harley isn't going to get taken over him on the team, because it's like, well, I don't need Lane Hutson per se, because Harley's going to do as good a job on the power play, and he's better defensively, and he's 6'4", right?
Which that's always going to be a factor.
Yeah,
always. But I don't know that Lane Hutson is ever going to be. Who knows? It depends how much, like you said, that he develops his defensive game. But I don't know how high his ceiling is in the international side of things, right? I don't know if he can be that number one guy, just unfortunately because of size and because of, a certain level of one dimension, pure offensive talent.
Of course.
But can he be a seventh defenseman where if all of a sudden Cale Makar gets hurt, you have a plug-and-play guy who's, going to keep that power play rolling? That's where I think Lane Hutson can fit, even in the 2026 Olympics for either USA or Canada. Yeah,
it's kind of funny. This feels like as if we were two people probably talking about how they talked about Subban in 2014. Where it was like, yeah, he's like the seventh D man. Just throw him on the power play. He's got a bomb. Except we're talking about Lane Hutson, who's just like, he'll make a pass that like only
that nobody else will see.
Yeah, like 5 other guys might be able to make in the world. Like,
I totally agree with you.
It's pretty cool, but it is kind of funny that it's a similar situation.
So time will tell what ends up happening. My guess is he ends up sticking with the U.S. Yeah. But it is fun to think about, the potential for him coming over and playing for the Great White North.
Yeah, that'd be pretty exciting. Do you know who it is that's Canadian in his family? I was surprised when I heard about it.
Yeah, I had never heard of it. I'm assuming his mom, just because otherwise maybe his dad would have been like, "Oh, I'm Canadian, maybe we can switch." But
yeah,
I'm assuming
that makes sense. Okay,
but pretty exciting stuff
for sure. I mean, who knows? Maybe it won't be Lane Hutson as a Canadian on the. Representing the Montreal Canadiens. Maybe it might be Noah Dobson on that Team Canada team.
Hey, absolutely. Noah Dobson.
That'd be pretty fun.
Right-handed defenseman. And if he ends up having a decent year with the Habs, because he was in the conversation last year for the Four Nations.
Yeah, a little bit.
But he just had a bit of an off year. Granted, everybody on Long Island did, which is why they got the first overall pick. But no, absolutely. I think Noah Dobson is a serious contender for that team if he can get back to his 2023-2024 form where he was like that 70-point power play quarterback. And people don't give him enough credit for his defensive play. People think he's a scrub. He's no Jacob Slavin. But from everything I've seen in the advanced analytics that I've seen over the past few months, he's a serviceable defenseman as well.
That's good to hear. I'm really looking forward to this season. Every time I think about the upcoming season, it's always about the forwards for some reason. And like, our offense is going to be great. But I'm still having trouble imagining Noah Dobson as a Hab, which is just great. Like,
it doesn't feel real yet, right?
No, it doesn't, because it was just a transaction that I saw, on draft day. And it's getting real. We're going to see it. It's going to be really, really exciting to see how he plays as a Hab.
Yeah, I mean, granted, we did lose some big pieces on defense. I'm talking especially David Savard, who, I don't know, he probably had 3 points last year. That wasn't his role. But who's going to be diving headfirst to block shots? That's where we're going to need to find a replacement. Is that going to be Arbor Jackeye? Is that going to be Jaden Struble? One of those bottom pair guys is going to have to step up into that David Savard role. Because if Lane Hutson's playing on your penalty kill, we have a problem. At this point in his career, anyways, right? Caden Gooley maybe, but he's so injury prone that, like, do you really want him to be blocking shots. Like he's
He's
more
going to be
effective in
doing
the
it.
lineup, right?
He's going to
You
be
think
doing
it's
it
gonna
though,
be Caden
Adam.
Gooley?
Yeah, he's that guy.
Yeah.
He's as hungry as they come, and he will do anything to win. That is how
I'm gonna be like holding my breath every time he goes down to block a shot.
I know, but I think that's just the reality. Is as long as he's
Speaking
in
of
the
guys, though,
lineup, he's playing to win.
That are injury prone. I guess this is a good way to transition. It's becoming abundantly clear that the Habs don't necessarily believe in Doc being their 2C of the future. So recently, a guy by the name of Pavel Zacha for the Boston Bruins was brought up, and I'm not a huge fan of a potential trade, of what a potential trade would look like for Pavel Zacha. In his best years, he put up 20 goals, 55 points.
Yeah,
Is that?
I know what you mean.
Are we just flex sealing the hole? Because that's not a sustainable 2C of the future.
No, I don't think he is either. I think that it is patchwork. I think that's all that is. If it does happen,
But do we want to give up assets for patchwork?
I don't.
For
Personally,
an immediate gain? Like, sure. Does Pavel Zacha make us better next year? Probably. And he's responsible defensively. He's pretty big from what I recall. So, yeah, he makes the Habs better next year. But what are we giving up for him? It's not going to be nothing.
It won't be nothing. But I think in a package like that, I think what Boston really wants is young players. And really, it's any kind of young player. So I've talked about this a little bit. I think we've talked about this a little bit. But it's guys like Wah, right? It's potentially, I'm just saying potentially, but it's potentially a guy like Owen Beck, right? It's these young fringe NHL players who are dying to get the opportunity to play in the league full time and show what they have. And Boston is becoming a situation like that, where they've got all of these old players or these kind of middle of the pack, you know what they are, right? They're bottom six forwards who are forced to play big minutes. We've got aging players like Victor Arvidsson. So I think in a return for a player like Zacha, you might be looking at a second or third round pick with a player like maybe Sean Farrell, maybe Joshua Wah, or an Adam Engstrom.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's a pretty realistic expectation. Like, I think it's going to look similar to... I think it's going to be more than you think that we might have to give up. I think it'll look similar to, like, the Brandon Carlo trade that Toronto made. Fraser Minton and a first.
Okay.
So, yeah, a guy like Joshua and maybe a good second-round pick.
Yeah. I can understand it.
I can see the appeal, and we've talked about it before. Second-round picks, I think, are way overvalued for how many of them actually turn out to be Nikita Kucherovs or Sebastian Ahos.
Yeah,
but
Lane
they're assets
Hutson's.
nonetheless that remain. Yeah, Lane Hutson, that's a great one.
Yeah.
They're assets that we may want to keep depending on where we are at this year's trade deadline.
Yeah, but
And
you don't.
Sorry, go ahead.
You don't know where you're going to be at the deadline if you don't have a Zacha. Maybe
That's true.
right? Like that's how they look at it.
If Doc gets hurt again, and all of a sudden we have, and we ranted about him last episode, so I'm not going to go into that again. But Alex Newhook is your 2C again. All of a sudden, you have a guy who can't hit the net with a beach ball.
Yeah.
In your 2C spot, trying to play with Patrick Laine and either Slavkovsky or Demidov. You don't want that.
Yeah, I think the more we talk about it, the more I'm actually okay with getting a guy like Zacha. He does play penalty kill. And we did lose a bit of talent there in the offseason.
100%.
We lost Dvorak
Armia.
And Armia. Yeah, and Zacha plays center. I'm not totally against giving up assets that we talked about for a player of that profile. He is on a 2-year deal. It's like 4.75. I actually really don't hate this. The more we talk about it, actually, honestly,
I've turned you the wrong way.
You turned me the wrong way. Because I think.
Okay, so what if it's a first round pick and what? Which maybe is more realistic given his contract.
And the Bruins not having to give up a guy like Zacha.
Yeah, they don't have to.
They don't have to.
Especially not to a divisional rival, right?
If it's top 5 protected or top 10 protected, I would do it.
Okay, so there would have to be some kind of protection.
Yeah, and I think Kent Hughes would make sure there's some kind of protection.
Something along the lines of like, it's a second round pick that turns into a first if the Habs make the playoffs and Zacha has X amount of points.
Sure. Yeah, okay, and he plays 60 games, right?
Wow. I think you just convinced me.
I'm kind of, you know what? Yeah.
Kent Hughes, if you're listening, trade for Pavel Zacha.
Like
right now.
Right now, baby. No, honestly, I think I'm talking myself into this trade. Because last year, Boston just was bad. And so many guys got hurt. And he still put up 47 points. And the 2 years before that, he was putting up high 50s.
Yeah, his point totals dropped because Lindholm came in, right? He all of a sudden took over that 1C.
Yeah, so he was kind of like splitting responsibilities all year. You know what? Yeah, give me Pavel Zacha for 2 years. I want to see what this looks like, actually.
Yeah, and
like if we're not
getting more.
Yeah, no, it's 4.7, dude. You know what? The Habs have roughly that amount of cap space. So
now that they traded franchise legend Carey Price.
That's true. Now we have some cap space. I look, the Habs aren't going to make this move tomorrow.
Neither are the Bruins, frankly. I don't know if you saw Charlie McAvoy's comments, but of course he has to say this, but it feels like they're relatively confident that last year was a fluke and they're going to be able to get back, maybe not into their form of a couple years ago where they were the greatest team in the regular season of all time, but they'll get back into that mix with the Habs, with the Sens, with the Rangers. So the Bruins aren't making this trade tomorrow either. I think they want to see what they have next year before they start moving guys.
That's fair. Especially earlier on in the offseason, I wasn't very convinced as other people on the Bruins playing terribly this year.
Yeah.
Like I understand the thoughts a little more as like the offseason's gone on because I've looked at their lineup all in all and I'm like, they did. Their forward core is frankly not great.
No more Carlo. So all of a sudden that almost legendary defensive unit that took them to almost 60 wins a few years ago is no longer. He was kind of a stalwart there, especially when McAvoy was out.
Yeah, I think we'll see in November, maybe early December. Probably like, I think maybe around Christmas or a little after Christmas, you might start to see a Zacha or like Crosby quotes a little bit more, right? Where it's like, we're both teams may be lacking or one is and one isn't. And those guys' names start getting put out there a lot more. And that's when there will be some talk.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Those trades aren't to be made tomorrow, but if all of a sudden Doc is out again and Christmas time, like you said, rolls around, the Bruins are dog shit again, then I could see the Habs doing like a conditional second and Roy for Pavel Zacha. Sure. It would be a little bit of patchwork, but then I guess all of a sudden that makes Doc expendable. You can move Newhook back to the wing. Thank God. If I have to see Newhook take one more face-off, I think I'm gonna lose it.
That's fair. It's too bad.
I don't think that I don't think Zacha necessarily patches our 2C hole. If we acquire Pavel Zacha, I'm not going to be like, perfect, work is done, Pavel Zacha, 2C of the future. That's not how I feel. But he does make us better in the immediate present.
Yeah, the guy's 28. I'm not going to hate having a 28-year-old and then 29-year-old Pavel Zacha. I'm not going to hate that at all.
Yeah. Wow. I just convinced myself in a matter of 10 minutes.
Yeah. At first I was like, Zacha, he's not that good. And I'm like, actually, he's 6'3" and he's 205. I'd consider that for sure.
That's pretty decent.
That would actually, it doesn't sound too bad.
Anyways, guys, that's it. This was episode 2 already. I think it went a little smoother than the last one. It was a lot of fun, and we're going to hope to get another episode out sometime next week. So subscribe on Spotify or on YouTube or wherever you're listening. And, we'll see you in a bit.